Booktube, this is Kelly. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Books I'm Not Reading. I'm here today with a Jane Austen July video, and I'm going to be talking about Mansfield Park, the book, versus Mansfield Park, the feature film. So I finished this book last week, and I watched this weekend. But I kept thinking about a line in the Jane Austen book club where they're standing in line to go see this film. These characters haven't met each other yet, but and one of the characters says, you know, it's not really Mansfield Park, it's more of an interpretation. And I kept thinking about, like, what does that mean? Like, what is in this that's not, that is or is not in Mansfield Park? And it's been so long. I read Mansfield Park the year this movie came out. I'm sure, I feel pretty confident that I was able to finish it before seeing the movie. But yeah, that was in 1999. So it's quite a while ago. It's a very different world. And so I'm so glad that I returned to this. And the film, actually, I enjoyed watching the film more than I think, yeah, more than I previously have. But I want to talk about the really big differences between the two. So the first thing that we need to do is say, like, I am going to spoil the book and I am going to spoil the movie. So if either of these things you haven't finished, you haven't gotten to yet, and you don't want them ruined, by all means, please put this video on your watch later list or whatever, and don't go any further. Secondly, I want to say that there are things that a book can do, especially, I mean, my copy of Mansfield Park is 439 pages. Jason was explaining to me how long scripts are. This movie's a little under 2 hours, so the script for it was probably 110 pages. So just there alone, that's huge. There are things that a film can do that the book can't. There can be a lot of nuance. There's a lot of really great actors out there who act with their faces, that their facial expressions are so subtle and key. So I'm going to talk today about 5 differences between Mansfield Park, the book, and Mansfield Park, the film. But I don't want to take anything away from either of them because they're both excellent. Mansfield Park is a 4-star book for me. Nothing quite holds up to Pride and Prejudice, I'm afraid. And this is probably my least favorite film adaptation that I have seen, but I will say Northanger Abbey is my least favorite Jane Austen novel. I know, some of you are freaking out. You're screaming at the video right now. I know. I know how much you love Northanger Abbey, but I think Mansfield Park is better. And like I said, I've yet to see a film adaptation of Northanger Abbey, but this is probably the Jane Austen movie I go to last when I'm pulling one out of our collection. So, all right, so let's talk about what really happens in Mansfield Park versus the film. And I've got my notebook here, so I hope you'll bear with me for looking down a little bit. So Fanny Price, number one, Fanny Price is not a writer, which the film from the opening credits implies. She is a storyteller. That is not Fanny Price. Fanny Price writes letters. Yes, she definitely does. She knows how to read and write, that sort of thing. But, you know, in the opening credits of the film, it says it not only is it based on Mansfield Park, but also Jane Austen's early letters and early journals. And I know some of the history, her history of England is used at the very beginning of the film, because, you know, she's talking about Joan of Arc and Henry VIII and Elizabeth. One of my favorite lines in the film is Run mad as often as you choose, but do not faint. I love that. But that is not in Mansfield Park. That is in Love and Friendship, part of Austen's juvenilia. So difference number 2. Okay, so Fanny's closest sibling is not her younger sister in the book, at least not initially. It is her older brother, William. And this is really important when we get to the difference. And like William comes to Mansfield Park. He comes to see, he comes and visits, and that's when they have the ball. Number 3, does Henry Crawford really love Fanny? So one of the things in the book that I thought was really powerful is that Henry Crawford actually helps Fanny's brother, William, advance in the military. None of this, of course, is in the film. But that is a really big deal, and I think that would make her feel much more obligated and much more guilty for refusing him than is portrayed in the film. The whole thing in the film with the birds, the starlings, right? That's from... there is a reference in the book to Lawrence Stern's Sentimental Journey, but it's actually Maria Bertram who brings up Sentimental Journey, not Fanny Price, and it certainly isn't carried throughout the rest of the book. So in the film, it's quite interesting if you start paying attention to bird cages and birds and things like that. That definitely is noticeable there, but I think it's a really big deal what Henry Crawford does for Fanny's brother, but she never agrees to marry him. Again, big difference from the film, and a big difference in, like, you know, how he behaves, his attitude, you know, but she never wavers from that. Now, I would say that Fanny Price as a character is not as spirited as she is in the film. And I think that's being part because we're trying to put Jane Austen onto Fanny Price a little bit, right? But Fanny, her health isn't great, and you know, she needs to go horseback riding, and, you know, sometimes walks exhaust her and things like that. So she's more frail than the film portrays her. But in spite of that frailty, she does not have frailty of conviction. She is very concerned with what is right, what is appropriate, even though that's not really the household that she, you know, was born into. Again, though, I think it's a much bigger deal, her rejecting him after he's helped her brother advance in the military. Number 4, does Edmund really love Mary or Fanny? The movie, you know, there's just, it could do so many great things. Like, there's just so many, like, you know, there's an almost kiss, and there's a little bit of hand holding between Edmund and Fanny, and you know, but there's all of this, like, and all these glances and that kind of stuff. And even at one point in the film, Mary Crawford says to Edmund, I think you need to admit that you love Fanny Price. And he's like, well, there's as many kinds of love as there are minutes in the day, you know? And she's quite pleased with that answer, obviously, in the film, but that is not in the book. There is not... I feel like we know that Fanny loves Edmund in the book, even though that she feels like she has very, very little hope of ever getting together with him, that she has this tiny thread that she's hanging on to, but I think she's also prepared herself to see Edmund engaged to Mary Crawford, which also does not happen in the book. Edmund is never engaged to Mary Crawford. And, you know, in the book, Edmund and Fanny have a conversation about Mary Crawford quite early after their first meeting about her behavior. And then it's almost like Edmund just forgets, and he's just so blind the whole book. I feel like we get very little sense of his feelings to Fanny other than as a cousin or as a sister, almost, like until of course the end, right? That we are all waiting for. But you know, there's a really powerful scene where Edmund tells Fanny about how things end with Mary Crawford, which is not in a big family scene or whatever. It's just the two of them. And, you know, the actions that Henry Crawford take, which I'm going to get to here in just a second, but that really shakes things up at the end of the book and has ramifications for lots of characters. But I did feel like in the book, Edmund was more of a blank slate. And it's only at the end where he kind of suddenly awakens to the fact that he really does love Fanny. Okay, so number 5. All right. So as we know, towards the end of the book, you know, Fanny has told Henry that, you know, she needs more time. She needs to think about his proposal. I do think that she warms a bit to him in the book. But she does not agree to marry him. It's very important. However, when he hooks up with Mrs. Rushworth, aka Maria Bertram, yeah, they run off together. Tom Bertram is home sick, and his sickness is aggravated by what Maria does, and then also Julia runs off with Mr. Yates because she knows that as soon as the word gets out about what her sister has done, that nobody is going to touch her with a 10-foot pole. So she runs off with Mr. Yates. So all this is happening, you know, like this poor family was just like child after child, you know, and Edmund's on the point of proposing maybe to Mary Crawford, but Mary Crawford is tainted by Henry's actions as well, I think, even though she still has 20,000 pounds. But yeah, in the film, it was interesting. At the very end, Julia Bertram gets a letter from Mr. Yates. So that was the allusion to the fact that no, actually in the book, she runs off with him and gets married. So there's just a lot of chaos at the end of towards the end of Mansfield Park. A lot of things shake up, and then of course Jane Austen sort of brings her own voice in and talks about how things resolve, but she doesn't give really any timelines. She doesn't ever specifically say, you know, this happened in this particular order or anything like that. It's just like, you know, Edmund falling in love with Fanny happens as the day and the week and, you know, the moment that it was supposed to happen, but we don't know when that is. We don't know how long that is. And I think what's missing from the end of Mansfield Park is actually Edmund speaking those words of love, because we just get a description of it more than we actually hear his voice and hear her response to it. So that is a bit sad. I haven't read all of the introduction to my copy of Mansfield Park, but the little snippet that I did read people feel like, or scholars, I guess, feel like Mansfield Park is Jane Austen's most complex and most modern novel, and also the least likable. And it's not the least likable for me, especially on a second reading after so many years. I've enjoyed it more. It was challenging. It was a challenging read. I think when you get out of the habit of reading Jane Austen, you return to it. Like, there's always sort of an adjustment period, getting used to that voice and the language and that kind of thing. But yeah, so it's not my least favorite Austen novel. I don't know exactly how I would rank things. And again, I don't want to disparage the film either. Frances O'Connor and Johnny Lee Miller are fantastic. They have incredible chemistry. The people who play the Crawfords are wonderful, you know, as actors, and it's just really, it's great. But it is not, it is an interpretation. I almost wish they had named this something other than Mansfield Park. You know, something else to really clue us in, like that this is a totally different take on this particular story. And a feature film has to, right? Because it just doesn't have the time. It doesn't have the time to do, you know, 439 pages of the actual Mansfield Park. So this is one of Austen's books that I wish had a better, you know, I wish there was a mini series that was good. I haven't heard or seen anything. If I have time later this month, there is a modern retelling of Mansfield Park called Metropolitan. It was made in 1990. So if I have time to watch that, I will try to get to it. But in the meantime, this is gonna have to suffice for my review of the film and the book, and the big differences between the two of them. So thank you guys so much for watching BookTube. Remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.